Hello, and welcome to the Developing Discernment webinar. I am Alexis Saludos, and I'm so happy to be here with you all today and to be sharing this information. I feel that discernment is absolutely essential to everything in life, and it is a huge part of intuition. And we're going to talk all about what discernment is, how to work with it, some of the challenges in working with it, and so much more. So I would love to just hear from all of you. Where are you joining from? And what is it that you are hoping to strengthen? What is it that you feel you need with when it comes to discernment? And I am going to share my screen. I have some slides to go over with you all. Okay, so here we are. And whoops, we're just going to start with, I'm going to pull up the chat so that I can see anything that comes up. I'll do my best to keep my eye on it. So here we are. We are at this space of having the awareness that discernment is something to work with. So that is definitely the starting point in itself. And for those of you that are not familiar with me and my work, my academic background is in nutrition. I've spent a lot of my life studying the physical body. I've worked in gyms and with exercise science and nutrition for just many years, and always holding this desire to expand beyond the physical while working with the tangibility of the physical body and the physical realm. I've always been interested in energy and intuition, and have just craved that ability to bridge the seen with the unseen, the physical with the non-physical, to support all levels and layers of healing. And in 2014, I received what I refer to now as the Chakra teaching. It was the foundational part of that work, the chakra assessment that works with a special crystal pendulum, and it connects with different presentations, different movements in relationship to the energy centers, and provides a structure and framework to help perceive what is going on with the energy. And what's so amazing about the Chakra system is that it is this structure, and it helps to organize information, but it creates the space for individual interpretation and encourages individuality within this work. So, and the reason why I'm bringing that up for this webinar is that it is so important that we go within to access the information that we are receiving, and developing discernment requires this effort. And that's what we are going to cover today. So tangible intuition is the intuition part of this teaching, and it's based on anatomy and directionality to also provide context for intuitive placement and individually derived interpretation. So all things really lead back to self-directed guidance and accessing the insights from within. This is where we can become empowered to really connect with all of our experience. So when someone says, oh, well, I'm interested in intuition, but I don't really feel like I'm intuitive. We all are intuitive, and we all have a wealth of information to tap into from this lifetime and beyond. And so truly, it is there's so much to be accessed and there's so much to be worked with. And what's helpful about this work is that it does provide that structure and that context to get specific and to begin articulating and interpreting what it is that you are perceiving. So the theme that connects all of this is that it's really up to you to do the work, and that conscious connection and application of the concepts is what helps to develop awareness and intuition and discernment. So with that, let's go over what we will be covering in this webinar. So I like to cover as much as possible. That's the way that I love to teach. I'm very passionate about this work, and I like to share as much as I can fit into the window of time that we have. So I will leave space for questions, and I encourage you to share what comes up for you. Chances are, if something's surfacing for you, it is likely surfacing for someone else. And we are all able to just benefit from learning in community and sharing our experience together, which is so, so helpful and powerful. So what is intuition? We will be covering that. What is discernment? I'll be speaking to interference and how it is important to acknowledge interference when you are intentionally developing your discernment. We're going to do a brief chakra overview for those of you who may be new to working with energy and the energy system. I'll speak to the spectrum and blind spots, discernment flags, resonance and alignment. Also, I'll be speaking to accessing neutrality, why neutrality is so essential in discernment and sensing across the centers. And then we're going to put it all to the chakra test. Okay. So what is intuition? I'm going to put that out there and also invite you to respond to that. What is intuition? How do you define intuition? So my definition of intuition is that it is body-based resonance recognition, which sounds pretty intense, but it is your body, and meaning your physical body and also your energy bodies that are able to detect resonance. And intuition speaks through the physical body sensations and also subtle intuitive impressions across the energy centers. So this is what the intuition teaching, the tangible intuition teaching is based on, is this structure of directionality across the energy centers. And this is helpful because it can support placement of subtleties. Intuition, when we think about intuition on a spectrum and how it can communicate, we can experience our intuition speaking on a very pronounced level. So those alarm bells that go off that signal that you're in danger, that you're being threatened in some way, that is a very pronounced expression of your intuition. And that very pronounced, very clear expression of your intuition is not typically going to be ignored or dismissed because it's so overt and so clear and just really is not going to let you ignore it. Whereas day-to-day intuition, because we are receiving intuitive information all the time in every dynamic, in every exchange, all throughout the day, we are having this, there is a dialogue that's happening. So whether we are listening to what our intuition is saying is part of that, but there's this dialogue that we can engage with at any point in time. And day to day, your intuition is typically communicating in a much more subtle way. So the way in which you are experiencing those subtleties can range, of course, on a spectrum, but the subtleties are what typically get overlooked or don't present themselves in such a clear, pronounced way to be worked with. They can be, they can, it just can take some practice and some repetition to really connect with what those subtleties are suggesting. So think of intuition as the raw information, the raw data that's coming through the interface of your physical body and the energy centers. So you have an opportunity to then tune into that information and start to connect with what does that mean for you. So what is discernment? And of course, these are just my definitions. I can only share from my perspective and lens. Discernment is the lens that you apply to interpret intuitive information. And when you are clear in your body's ability to discern resonance from dissonance, then you can discern truth frequency because truth resonates. So to strengthen your discernment, you must consciously engage with your intuition and practice interpreting the information you receive and apply what you gather to your everyday way of being. So discernment is the lens in which you are interpreting the information. And this is the lens that we really want to intentionally work with and start to expand and develop so that we can have a greater lens to view and perceive things. If we're just walking around with a very narrow lens, then there are going to be lots of things that we aren't able to see. And I'm going to speak to that as well. Okay. So here's a question for you. So what are you wanting to develop? What do you feel you struggle with regarding ment? I would like to hear from you. What are you wanting to develop discernment around? And what do you struggle with when it comes to discernment? Okay, boundaries, extreme subtlety, waiting for validation in the physical world, struggling with the intellectual process in contrast to what I'm experiencing in my body, idea versus bodily sensations. These are all really great connections. And yes, discernment can be perceived as the way in which you are seeing things. It is the lens that you apply to then interpret intuitive information. So we're all receiving intuitive information. We're picking up on information within our bodies. We're picking up on information from our environment. Different energy centers are connected with different ways of experiencing intuitive information. And discernment needs to be applied to that information that we're experiencing in order to interpret it, in order to discern, is this resonating? Is this not resonating? Okay. Distinguishing internalized fears from real fears. Okay, these are all really wonderful connections. So hold those questions, those connections as to this information as we go through it, and then let's see how that unfolds. Okay, let's talk about interference. So unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but interference, there are so many different types of interference, and there are many interferences to clear discernment that can range from the physical level to the mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. So to strengthen discernment, we can work with the chakra system to help us establish more of a broad spectrum lens. So discernment really asks that we're putting all of our senses to work. And this is going beyond just, sight and sound and taste and smell. I think I got all 5 of those in there. This is going beyond that. This is really working with your entire being and body to sense what it is that you are experiencing, and then to begin connecting with that information, articulating it, and seeing what does it mean for you. And that is where this requires the effort and the practice to just keep applying what comes through for you to your everyday life experience so that you can strengthen it. So sensing at each energy center can help work through many of the barriers and blocks to perceiving what resonates as truth in your being. And when you can identify resonance or truth frequency, then you can make clear choices that are authentic and aligned for you, not choices that are based on the conditioned you. So there are many ways in which we experience conditioning, and that can be anything from childhood, upbringing, to social conditioning, to we can look at many different types of spheres of influence that impact the way in which we perceive the world, and that can work as barriers and blocks to what is really true within. And so much of the work with intuition is not actually developing something new inside of you. It's releasing the layers that prevent you from accessing that information that's already there. So what I teach is a framework to help place and interpret that information, but that information is already inside of you. It's you're experiencing that every minute of every day and have been your entire life. So you really are, there's nothing new to develop in that. That's already there. It's learning to make sense of it. And so releasing, starting to connect with the things that function as barriers or obstacles to that true knowing and self is really where the work resides, because it's typically those layers of interference that make it more challenging to experience your intuition. Okay. So let me just touch on the chakras, which have become the foundation for this framework. And I wondered in the beginning, why are the chakras surfacing as the foundation for this assessment? And now it makes so much sense, because they are the bridge between the seen and the unseen. And the energy centers, so there are 7 main energy centers, and they're large energy centers. The energy is fluid, it's always fluctuating. And the energy centers can communicate how we relate to our internal environment and also how we relate to our external environment. So they function as this interface. And the chakra system provides anatomical and energetic structure to place and make sense of intuitive information, because every chakra has an affinity for energetic information. So we can look at the various aspects that are connected with each center and start to work with intuitive information that is connected with those aspects. So one of the very important pieces in everything, and not just discernment and intuition and working with energy and everything in life, is this spectrum. So when it's really critical that we be willing to see the spectrum for what it is, so that we can have that broader, more expansive lens to then apply to the information we are receiving. If you are unwilling to see the shadow and it's present, it can hold power over you, creating blind spots in the energy and opportunistic windows for energies to come through without your awareness. So one of the things that surfaces in the Chakra work and training other practitioners in the Chakra methodology is a lot of students have come to the work years where their resistance to acknowledging the shadow part of the spectrum because it can create fear, and because there can be this this hesitation to looking in that direction, because if you look at that, does that then mean that you are inviting it into your experience? And so my approach to working with energy and intuition is that when you stand clearly in yourself and you declare sovereignty in your being, and you really connect with inhabiting your physical form and connecting with your energy, working with your awareness, then you have great ability to see the spectrum for what it is and actually protect your energy field more, because you have the awareness, you have the sight and the willingness to see. And this is very helpful in discernment. It's essential in discernment, because if you are just locked into a single part of that range, then you're not going to have the ability to discern anything else that falls onto the other part of the spectrum. So you actually create a very big blind spot for yourself if you're only locked in to part of that spectrum. So it's very important to discern, to developing discernment overall, that we be that we practice trust in our own body, and that we really practice intentional connection with our spirit and sovereignty in our being, so that we are able to stand with confidence in ourselves. And this prevents fear from being able to take over. Okay, discernment flags. So these are things to pay attention to that can raise your discernment radar. So my message here is do not dismiss, do not dismiss these flags. So pay attention to the things that surface for you where something doesn't quite land right. Something just feels a little off. So pay attention to that. And this is all about creating a dialogue within yourself, within your own energy. How can you inquire further? How can you pursue that thread of information so that you can experience greater clarity around what that information is revealing to you? And you can put it to the test, which we're going to go over at the end. If something makes you uncomfortable, and you start to, a lot of shoulds start to surface that begin to engage your intellect, this can lead to intuitive override. So what do I mean by that? If something makes you feel uncomfortable and then immediately your energy goes into your head and you start thinking about all of the reasons that you shouldn't feel uncomfortable, or this should be this way, or that's one of the ways that you can move into a space where your intellect is going to override your intuitive information, that immediate intuitive information that's coming through. So one of the things that I recommend is, so you want to work with the intellect and the intuition. You want to harmonize and engage both. And so if you create a practice where you just say to your intellect, hey, I want you to work on my behalf. I want to hear what it is that you have to say. I'm going to allow this intuitive information to come through first, and then let's see, what you want to process and analyze around this. Because if your intellect just immediately jumps in and you start to go into this, really in-depth process around trying to decipher what things mean, and it sends you into some kind of thought loop, that prevents that intuitive information from filtering. So we want to hang back with the intellect and then bring it in once that intuitive information has fully formed. So the other piece is that can signal, pay attention to this opportunity to practice discernment, is mixed messages across the energy system, the body, the chakras. So for example, something lands one way in the gut and then it lands another way in the head. So there's almost this battle between the solar plexus and the third eye chakra, where they're trying to, they're competing around, well, this is what it really is. No, this is what I'm feeling. So if you're starting to get mixed messages across the body, then that's something to give more attention to. That's something to really sit with more. So again, 3 things that can flag your discernment. When something doesn't quite sit right with you, when something just feels off, pay attention to it. This is an opportunity for you to get in dialogue with your body, with your energy, with your own knowing. When something makes you feel uncomfortable and you start to shift into the head and you can feel yourself going down this path of potentially overriding the information because your brain is getting involved in telling you that you should be doing something a certain way. So that can highlight some conditioning to be worked with. And then mixed messages across the energy system and the physical body. So these are things that just invite you into a deeper dialogue to see what is really happening with what your body is showing you, with what your energy is showing you. Okay, another question for you. What types of flags have surfaced for you in the past to heighten your discernment? Did you work with these flags or did you override them, and why? So I had just written below that you really want to pay attention to the why and start to see, is this childhood conditioning? Is this societal pressure? Whatever it is, this is going to help you identify patterns that are suppressing your discernment abilities. So these are things that you can sit with. These are things that you're welcome to type into the chat box that you can journal further around. Whatever and however you best work with processing and deeper inquiry, I definitely encourage you to work with this. All right, let's talk about resonance and alignment. So when you are in alignment across the energy centers, you can connect with what resonates from this place of alignment. And this can help to provide you with more of that broad spectrum lens to discern subtleties within the energy. When you are dominating in one directionality, and I'm happy to speak to directionality more, just to clarify what I mean by that. So let's say at the front of the energy body, so your energy is more dominant at the front, or maybe it's more dominant above at the top of your energy body, and you're not as centered in your being, it's going to be more challenging to discern resonance from dissonance. So if your energy is not aligned, and that doesn't mean perfect, because we're always in flux and everything is always shifting in every moment. So this is not about being in perfect chakra balance. This is about operating from a space of authentic alignment so that we can have clear discernment. We can clearly discern when something is resonating and when it's not. If you are really dominant in the front of your energy body, your energy is out here and you're projecting your energy a lot of the time, it's going to be much harder to discern because it creates more of a contraction at the back of the energy field. So if we think about our energy as a line of energy and you are projecting at the front, so you're so far in the front that you're losing sight of the back. This creates a distortion in your ability to perceive what is pinging you and how and what that is suggesting. So when you are, let's see, so layers of conditioning and patterning can trigger you more easily, and it can be harder to access neutrality, which means that you may be operating with more blind spots. So we all have blocks, and we are going days with various things that surface that can trigger us into just maybe old patterns or into different reactionary states. And so working with this ability to access neutrality provides the space for greater perception for that broad spectrum lens. Okay. Whoops. So directional dominance. This is just a very simple depiction of what I mean by directional dominance. So if your energy is dominating at the top and you're way up in the heights of your head without your awareness inhabiting the lower parts of your body, it's going to create distortion in your ability to discern. Because how are you going to discern what's happening down here if you're so locked into being up here? So we want to be engaged with all directions. So front, back, top, bottom, left, right. When we engage with all of these directions, then we can dynamically mediate, we become a dynamic mediator of these directionalities at the center of our own body and being. And this is how we can live at the center of our being, be in the present, be in the now moment, and have these spherical views of our own field. So we increase our ability to perceive and to discern what it is that we are perceiving. Okay. All right, so let's talk about accessing neutrality. So we live in a world of duality in this physical plane, and which is why we really want to work with the spectrum in order to develop discernment. So if we're only looking to the light end, then we can create a blind spot towards the dark end of the spectrum. And of course, the other way around. So when you become polarized and you operate from this dominant direction, it's easy to lose sight of whatever the opposition is. So if you're front forward, it's easy to lose sight of the back. And directionalities have different connotations and different connections, different relationships to various things in your energy. So if you're front dominant, this can be more of that future orientation, more of that, how are you taking action? What's happening going forward? Output, energetic output. And action is more of the, what I would term, balanced state of the front directionality, whereas projection is more of that imbalanced state. So they're different energetically, but they're both associated with the front of the energy. So if we're only operating from the front, and this is actually ingrained into us from the time that we're so small, because everything is about, what are you doing? What are you putting out there? Everything is future oriented. And then we can lose sight of what's happening back here energetically. How do we open ourselves up to receiving energy? How do we allow, how do we increase receptivity? So this is more input at the back, output at the front. And I'm just sharing that to provide context for directionality and how it can really serve in energetic awareness, but also in discernment. Because if you're only locked into something and you have this very narrow view, you're not going to be able to see all of these other things that are happening around you. And so the work around developing discernment really becomes a deep inner quest to identify where it is that you are locked into different constructs, locked into belief systems, locked into ways of being that are preventing you from being able to have more of this spherical view of yourself and everything around you. So when you become polarized and operate from the dominant direction, you can lose sight of the oppositional energy. And accessing neutrality is absolutely essential to applying discernment. And this doesn't mean that you can't stand in alignment with what is true for you if it feels so. Accessing neutrality doesn't mean that you aren't aligned with certain things. It just means that you are able to get into a space where you are not charged, you're not in a reactionary state, so that you can expand your perceptions and you can see beyond just one narrow way of viewing things or just a particular line of energy. You want to expand the ways in which you can perceive and different angles that you're able to perceive from. So accessing neutrality is so essential for discernment, because when you do get into more of a neutral space, then you can access more clarity around sensation. What are you picking up on? What is coming through for you? And instead of going into a space where you start judging yourself for feeling something, or fill in the blank, whatever it is, various things that can interfere with the process of discernment, you can get into this space where you can have that greater lens to then really, from a place of curiosity, begin interpreting things. What's going on for you? What are you picking up on? And what does this mean for you? Okay, so one way to work with this and to begin putting discernment to practice is to connect with something that you can establish as a discernment marker. So what do I mean by that? So something that feels deeply important to you, that can bring you into a greater state of alignment across the chakra system. And I'll give you an example. So someone had said to me a while ago, and it was huge. A big shout out to Wendy for that insight. It was such an incredible insight. So thank you, Wendy, for sharing this. So when something resonates, when something brings you into a greater state of alignment that is very essential to your being and feeling connected in your being, this can be a great marker in discernment. So one example is nature. So I connect the earth plane nature and physical body with the root chakra, but we can look at this, we can hold this to all of the energy centers. So if nature is something that brings you into that state of peace and deep alignment and feeling centered and grounded and connected, you can hold this marker up to anything that you come into contact with and ask the question, is this bringing me into greater alignment with nature, or is this taking me away from that? am I accessing a deeper alignment, or am I being pulled away from this alignment? And this can be one way to begin holding up something to the information that is coming through for you, and starting to use something tangible to support that process of discernment. And this process in itself can then help you access a greater state of neutrality, because you're shifting into that place of looking at, okay, what's happening in my energy? And so there's more of this observational way of being that is connected in with that more neutral state. And then you can apply to all of the energy centers. So you could really take some time to look at each energy center and what might be an aspect or an energy specific to each chakra that brings you into that greater state of alignment. So it could be nature at the root, it could be bound sacral. These are the primary energies associated with each of the chakras. So grounded at the root, boundaries at the sacral, centeredness at the solar plexus, compassion at the heart, truth at the throat, clarity at the third eye, and connection at the crown. And these are primary energies that I hold to my own self and the information that comes through for me. And I look at, okay, when I'm experiencing this, am I able to access that state of compassion? If not, what does that show me? So I'm looking at various dynamics and various alignments across the energy centers, and connecting in with that directionality of, do I feel pulled forward in this part of my body? What's happening there? And that helps me to practice greater awareness and that spherical way of being, so that I feel more open to perceiving as much as I can. as much as I humanly can. Okay, so getting stuck in this block for so many people, and we covered that earlier, but if you find yourself struggling with discernment, and you can check to see if you're getting stuck in the head, if this is a pattern for you, because there can be that great conflict between the intellect and the intuition that resides at the third eye. So there's so much that's happening here. So if you find yourself in this space, then I would just encourage you to drop that information down. So you can move it down into the heart as a place where that can feel very tangible for many people. But really just bringing that information, that energy down into the heart or into the solar plexus, and see, what do you experience sensation wise and intuitively at that part of your body if you feel stuck in your head. So can you take whatever that information is that's triggering this state of conflict and battle between the intellect and intuition, drop it down into the heart. What does the heart have to reveal about this? How does this information make you feel, and what is the sensation that you experience at the heart? Or what is it that you experience at the solar plexus in relationship to this? Can just be an intentional way of directing your awareness. So directing awareness is a very powerful practice, and there is so much that you can do by simply instructing your energy. So if you feel locked into the head, instruct your energy to bring whatever that is that's creating conflict. Let's say it's a dynamic with another person, and you feel you're noticing that you're locked into these thought loops. It's like a program running over broken record in your head. Okay, well, can you drop that down into your heart, and what what do you experience sensation wise at your heart? And then go from there. And then this just elaborates on that concept. So you can take a piece of intuitive information and hold it up to each energy center and apply the discernment specialty of each to see what resonates and if there are discrepancies across the energy centers. So one way to do this is you could take a piece of paper and write out the energy centers: root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and crown. And what do you connect with? What is a primary connection that feels really important to you for each center? So I had shared, for me, the root and grounding is a primary energy to the root. Boundaries is a primary energy to the sacral. You could take that and you can apply what really you feel the most affinity for at each of the energy centers. And then you can begin taking whatever intuitive information that may not feel super clear and begin holding this lens of each energy center to that information. So how does it test? What do you sense around it? What do you feel? What do you experience? Images or words or colors or anything at all, textures, what are things that come through for you as you bring the essence of that information to each of the energy centers and apply the lens of the energy center to that information? I realize that this can be a bit of an advanced concept, but I feel that it's important and helpful. And even if you just begin developing discernment through the awareness that discernment is a lens in which you can interpret intuitive information, that in itself is huge. So this is just a range in how you can start working with that. And if it's helpful to come back to this, then definitely come back to this after you've practiced your awareness around just even perceiving sensation with a lens that can be discerning. Okay. Let's see. So, question, and this is the last question, although there are always many more. What feels more tangible to you around developing your own discernment, and how do you feel you can begin working with this? So I would love to leave some time to just pause and see if you have anything that you would like to share or any questions that I might be able to provide maybe more questions around your question. Thank you, CJ. I'm so happy that you can see the richness and possibility and clarity in the potential for the chakra test. And it really is, it's open for application, and there's just so much that you can do with it. So it's just a matter of putting it to practice. So thank you so much. Okay, and I'm going to close out of the screen share. A neutral crystal. Tell me more about what you mean by that, Tanya. Oh, yay, I'm so happy that it resonates. And yes, it's definitely, it can be, because we can receive so much intuitive information and at once, as we start to sit with information as it comes through, getting specific and tuning in to even just one energy center, one part of your body can really help to ease the overwhelm that can come with that intuitive bombardment. And there's so much. I mean, we are exposed to so much, and there are so many things that we cannot see that we're exposed to. And so we're really very stimulated, and that can contribute to that sense of feeling overwhelmed. And so the tendency can be to just completely disconnect or shut down that dialogue because it just feels like it's too much. So you can really begin taking things one step at a time in the way in which you dialogue with your intuition, so you don't feel like you're just, oh, I'm just opening up to everything, anything and everything, and the whole spectrum is out there and I don't even know what to do with this. Well, what if you just begin with connecting at the heart chakra, and you start to pay attention to sensation that comes through for you there, and then you can begin practicing this application of your discernment lens to see, okay, well, does this feel like this is resonating? If so, how can I articulate that? Does it bring me into a greater state of feeling aligned and centered, a greater sense of peace and calm, a greater connection with being able to access compassion? Or does it take me away from that? Do I feel triggered and I project out with a rage response? There are just so many ways to look at things. So just really, I encourage you to get really interested in your own body's ability to communicate with you, because it's so powerful. Okay, so let's see. Taylor, I do not sell single pendulums. The pendulums are part of the Chakra trainings, but I also have a pendulum masterclass. So, but the pendulums always come with a teaching. And Tanya, a crystal that would balance you and then use it for each energy center. Yeah, give it a shot. Absolutely. And just whatever you feel drawn to feels like a great place to start. Okay, MV, lately I feel that to strengthen the heart is the way, but don't know how. It feels vulnerable and physically like the heart is going to break, blow up or something. Yes. So one thing that you could do with this in terms of strengthening the heart and just working with some of the directionality that we talked about is to connect with, ask that question. Do you feel like you are more, are you more dominant in the front of the heart? Do you feel like you can bring your awareness to the back of the heart? This can be a really helpful starting point. Typically, the presentation I see is front dominant and then contracted at the back, which can suggest that there is some guarding or shielding going on to protect the heart. And this actually it creates an instability in the energy. Well, if you bring your awareness to the back and start to expand out, that can help to support receptivity, but it also protects your energy field. So working with that front back awareness can be really helpful. Okay, Cynthia, would tangible discernment involve the use of pendulums? Well, I love pendulum work, so I definitely feel yes, that it can, and it can. I think one of the ways in which pendulums are perceived can be that that there's a dependency that's put on this physical tool, and I perceive it in the opposite way, where the pendulums can really help in tune with things that we are already experiencing. We get that physical tool feedback, so we can have that tangible physical connection with the tool that's showing us how energy is moving and what's going on, and then we're able to connect that with what it is we're sensing and what we're feeling. And so I really feel that powerful. CJ, example, I have a very sore, soft palate since Thursday. So you're seeing this as, oh, okay. So just looking at various sensations or things that are surfacing and how that can be a metaphor. The body speaks through many metaphors, so there's definitely a lot to interpret there. And I always like to go back to the tangibility of the chakra system. And so if something is happening at the throat chakra, starting to look at, okay, what are some of the aspects or the energies that are associated with the throat that I can connect with here. And then you can also apply even just that front and back. So, what is surfacing for you. So it seems that you've already made some really powerful connections there, which is awesome. And so much that you have found this information helpful. And if you are interested in developing your intuition and find it interesting to connect with a particular energy center to do that, I have created some new tangible intuition courses that are self-study courses, and they're pretty great. I I feel like they're really fun. I love this work so much. So it's a joy to share it. And I'm off a special for intuition course bundle. So you can use the coupon code of all caps discernment 2021 if that's something that interests you. And screen share and just leave a moment. I know we're at the top of the hour. If you have any other questions for me or anything else that you would like to share. And it really is so powerful to connect with your intuition and start consciously engaging your discernment abilities, because your discernment abilities are all there. It's just a matter of working with them and in repetition, practice, and those abilities begin to develop into a skill set. And so you create a refined skill, your discernment. And thank you so much, CJ. I love that you connect with this work, and I love sharing this work. So thank you everyone for taking the time to listen today, and please put your discernment to practice. And I have some exciting things coming that I look forward to sharing with you all. And I hope that you have a wonderful week and lots of wonderful opportunities to strengthen your discernment. You can apply this to everything around you. So get to work and have fun with it, because it's deep and it's also expansive and it's light. So wishing you a great week and talk to you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.